The sound of my grandmother's pearls clicking against the mahogany dresser stopped my heart. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stood frozen in the doorway of our bedroom, watching my husband Marcus carefully place my heirloom jewelry into a velvet gift box, the same box I'd saved from our wedding 5 years ago. The afternoon sunlight caught the sapphire brooch that had belonged to my great-grandmother, the one piece I'd sworn I'd never part with, the one Marcus knew meant everything to me. "What are you doing?" The words came out steadier than I felt. Marcus jumped, nearly dropping the box. His face cycled through surprise, guilt, then settled on something harder, defensive. "Vanessa, you're home early. Clearly." I stepped into the room, my eyes fixed on the box in his hands. "Those are my grandmother's pearls. And my great-grandmother's brooch. And..." I moved closer, my stomach turning. "Is that my mother's engagement ring?" He had the audacity to look annoyed. "I can explain. I'm listening." I crossed my arms, fighting to keep my voice level even as my mind raced through impossible explanations. Was he selling them? Pawning them? Had we fallen into some financial trouble he hadn't told me about? Marcus set the box down on the bed with exaggerated care, like he was the one being careful with my family treasures. "It's for Celeste." The name hung in the air between us like poison gas. Celeste. His new executive assistant. The woman who'd started at his firm 6 months ago and had somehow become a fixture in our lives. Texts at all hours. Sudden work emergencies that required weekend meetings. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. "Excuse me?" I managed. "Before you overreact," Marcus held up his hands like he was calming a child. "It's her birthday next week. She's been going through a really difficult time with her divorce, and I wanted to do something special for her. Something meaningful." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for him to laugh and tell me he was joking, that he'd gotten her a gift card like a normal boss buying something for an employee. But his face remained serious, almost annoyed that he had to explain himself. "You're giving my family heirlooms to your assistant," I said slowly, testing whether saying it out loud would make it sound less insane. It didn't. "Jewelry that's been passed down through 4 generations. To a woman you've known for 6 months. She deserves it, Vanessa." Marcus's voice took on that patronizing edge I'd been hearing more and more lately. "Celeste has been through hell. Her ex-husband took everything in the divorce. Everything. She's starting over from nothing. These pieces," he gestured at the box, "they're just sitting in your jewelry box collecting dust. When was the last time you even wore them?" "That's not the point." My hands were shaking now. "These aren't just jewelry, Marcus. That brooch was my great-grandmother's. She wore it when she emigrated from Poland with nothing but the clothes on her back, and that piece pinned to her coat. My grandmother wore those pearls on her wedding day during the Depression. My mother gave me her engagement ring on her deathbed and made me promise." My voice cracked. "She made me promise to pass it to my daughter someday." "We don't have a daughter." His words were cold, clinical. "And we're probably not going to." The cruelty of it, the casual way he dismissed our 3 years of fertility struggles, the miscarriages, the failed IVF rounds, hit me like a physical blow. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. "How can you say that?" I whispered. Marcus sighed, running his hand through his hair. The same gesture he used in his courtroom when a witness was being difficult. I'd seen it 100 times when I'd watched him work, back when I was proud of his career. "Look, I'm just being realistic. We've spent a fortune on treatments and nothing's worked. Maybe it's time to accept that some things aren't meant to be." "We agreed we'd try the new protocol in the spring," I said. But even to my own ears, I sounded desperate. "Dr. Morrison said..." "Dr. Morrison says a lot of things," Marcus interrupted, "most of which seem designed to keep billing our insurance. Face it, Vanessa. We're not getting any younger. You're 38. The odds aren't in our favor." I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered when he'd become this stranger. The man I'd married would have held me through those miscarriages. This man seemed annoyed by them, inconvenienced. So you're giving away the jewelry I was saving for our daughter, the daughter we've been trying for, to your assistant. Her name is Celeste. And yes, he picked up the box again. She'll actually appreciate them. She'll wear them. She'll what? I stood up, something sharp and hot replacing the shock. She'll think her boss is in love with her? Because that's what this looks like, Marcus. This looks like a man buying affection. This looks like... I stopped myself, but his face told me he knew what I'd been about to say. Like what? His voice was dangerous now. Say it. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Like an affair. The words tumbled out. It looks like you're having an affair, Marcus. Or working up to one, he laughed. Actually laughed. That's ridiculous. Celeste and I have a professional relationship. She's going through a divorce, for God's sake. She's vulnerable. The last thing she needs is her married boss giving her his wife's family heirlooms? I finished. You're right. She definitely doesn't need that. Because that would be wildly inappropriate. Marcus's jaw tightened. You know what your problem is, Vanessa? You're jealous. You've always been jealous of my success, of my career, of anyone who gives me the support and respect I deserve. Support? I almost choked. I've supported you for 7 years. I worked 2 jobs to put you through law school while you studied. I took on freelance projects at night so we could afford your bar exam prep courses. I gave up the job offer in Seattle because you didn't want to leave Philadelphia. And now you're telling me I don't support you? That was years ago. He waved his hand dismissively. What have you done lately? You sit at home with your little jewelry design hobby, making trinkets that don't sell, while I'm pulling in 6 figures at the firm. Celeste understands what it takes to succeed. She understands pressure. She understands how to manipulate a man with a messiah complex. I cut in. She's not some damsel in distress, Marcus. She's 32 years old. She has a law degree. And from what I've seen on her social media, her devastating divorce hasn't stopped her from vacationing in Aruba and buying a new Mercedes. His face reddened. You've been stalking her online? I've been paying attention to the woman my husband can't stop talking about. There's a difference. We stood there, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across our bedroom floor. The bed where we used to talk for hours. The dresser where my jewelry box sat, now nearly empty. I'm taking these to Celeste, Marcus said finally, tucking the velvet box under his arm. You can be upset about it if you want, but I'm doing this. She deserves something good in her life. Something beautiful. Those pieces are worth over $60,000, I said quietly. Combined, he paused at the doorway. Since when? Since always. The brooch alone was appraised at $35,000 3 years ago. I had everything appraised and insured when we moved into this house. It's probably worth more now. I watched his face carefully, watched greed war with whatever emotion had been driving him. For a moment, I thought the money might matter more than his grand gesture. But then he shook his head. Celeste needs this more than we need the money. We don't need the money? I laughed bitterly. Marcus, we just took out a second mortgage to pay for IVF. We're still paying off your student loans. We're barely keeping up with the credit card payments. But sure, let's give away $60,000 worth of jewelry to your assistant. My career is about to take off, he said with absolute certainty. I'm about to make partner. When that happens, these money problems will disappear. But Celeste's problems? Her broken heart? Her shattered confidence? These pieces could actually help her heal. Could help her feel valued again. What about my broken heart? The question escaped before I could stop it. What about my shattered confidence? 3 miscarriages, Marcus. 3. And you've barely acknowledged any of them. That's not fair, he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I've been there. You've been in the room. That's not the same as being there. He left without another word, taking my family's legacy with him. I heard his car start in the driveway, heard the gravel crunch under his tires as he drove away. To her. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at my nearly empty jewelry box. The few remaining pieces, Earrings I'd bought myself, a cheap watch, a silver bracelet from a friend, looked lonely rattling around in the velvet compartments meant for treasures. Then I picked up my phone and pulled up the photos I'd taken 3 years ago during the appraisal. Every piece carefully documented, every angle photographed, every detail recorded. I'd been so careful when we'd moved to this house. Marcus had thought I was being paranoid about theft, but I'd watched my mother lose everything in a house fire when I was 10. No photos, no records, no way to prove what had been lost. I'd sworn I'd never be that unprepared. I scrolled through the images. My great-grandmother's sapphire brooch from 1920. My grandmother's triple-strand pearl necklace from 1945. My mother's 3-carat diamond engagement ring from 1982. The matching sapphire earrings. The vintage Cartier watch. The ruby pendant my father had given my mother on their 20th anniversary. All documented. All insured. All, as of 20 minutes ago, in the possession of a woman who wasn't me. My hands weren't shaking anymore as I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in years. Detective Sarah Chen. We'd gone to college together, stayed in touch sporadically. Last I'd heard, she'd made detective in the Philadelphia PD's fraud unit. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Vanessa? Wow, this is a blast from the past. How are you? I need a favor, I said. And I need you to not ask too many questions right away. There was a pause. Then, I'm listening. If I were to report jewelry stolen from my home, documented, insured jewelry worth about $60,000, what would be the process? Whoa, hold on. You were robbed when? Hypothetically, I said carefully. I'm asking hypothetically. Another pause. Longer this time. Sarah was smart. Always had been. Hypothetically, she said slowly. You'd file a police report. We'd investigate. If there was evidence of forced entry, that would strengthen the case. If there's documentation, photos, appraisals, insurance records, that would be crucial. And then you'd file a claim with your insurance company. And if the jewelry wasn't exactly stolen by a stranger? Vanessa. Sarah's voice changed, became more careful. What's going on? I looked at the photos on my phone again. Thought about Marcus driving across town right now, probably rehearsing his romantic speech about meaningful gifts and new beginnings. Thought about Celeste, who'd probably researched my husband's income before taking the job as his assistant. Thought about 3 years of fertility treatments, of my body betraying me month after month, of Marcus growing more distant with each negative test. Thought about how he'd said, she deserves it, like I didn't. I need to understand my options, I said. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Say 10 o'clock at that place we used to study at? The Blue Rooster? It's still there. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Vanessa, if someone took your jewelry, family, friend, whatever, that's still theft. The law doesn't care about the relationship. Good to know, I said. I'll see you tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat down at my desk, the one in the corner of our bedroom that Marcus always called my craft space, with barely concealed condescension. My jewelry design business wasn't a hobby, despite what he thought. It wasn't making us rich, but it was making money. More importantly, it was teaching me about stones, about settings, about value, and about documentation. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I'd labeled Insurance Records. Inside were the PDF files from the appraisal, the photos, the purchase receipts for the few pieces that had been bought rather than inherited. Everything organized, everything backed up to 3 different cloud services. Then I opened a new document and started typing. Date, time, circumstances. A detailed inventory of what Marcus had taken. His exact words, she deserves it. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Having dinner with Celeste to give her the gift. Don't wait up. We need to discuss some work things anyway. I stared at that message for a long time. We need to discuss some work things anyway. Like the jewelry was an afterthought. Like spending the evening with another woman while giving her his wife's heirlooms was just business as usual. I took a screenshot of the message and saved it to a new folder. Evidence, because that's what this was now. Not a marriage dispute. Not a misunderstanding. Evidence. I went downstairs to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of the expensive wine Marcus had been saving for a special occasion, and sat at the island counter where we'd eaten breakfast together just that morning, where he'd kissed my forehead and said "love you" before heading to work. That felt like a lifetime ago. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Hartley? This is Rachel Morrison from Prestige Insurance. I'm calling about your jewelry policy. My heart skipped. Yes? We're conducting routine reviews of our high-value policies, and I noticed yours comes up for renewal next month. I wanted to schedule a time to go over your coverage, make sure everything's still accurate. Have there been any changes to your collection? Any new acquisitions or pieces you've sold? I looked at my empty jewelry box, at the photos on my laptop, at the screenshot of Marcus's text message glowing on my phone screen. Actually, I said slowly, I'm glad you called. I do need to make some updates to the policy, but can I ask you something first? Of course. If jewelry covered under the policy were to go missing, stolen, let's say, what would the claims process look like? Rachel didn't miss a beat. Well, you'd need to file a police report first. That's mandatory for any theft claim. Then you'd submit the report along with your documentation, photos, appraisals, any receipts or provenance information. We'd assign an investigator to verify the claim. If everything checks out, we'd pay out the insured value minus your deductible. And how long does that usually take? Depends on the complexity. For a straightforward theft with good documentation, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. Why? Has something happened? I watched through the kitchen window as the sun set behind our neighbor's oak tree. The same tree Marcus and I had watched together when we'd first moved into this house, talking about building a tire swing for the children we'd have. The children we didn't have. The children he'd apparently given up on. Not yet, I said, but I'd like to schedule that policy review as soon as possible. Tomorrow, if you're available, I can do 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Would that work? Perfect. After she hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, not bothering to turn on the lights. My mind was racing through scenarios, through timelines, through consequences. Marcus had stolen from me. That was the simple truth. The jewelry was mine, inherited, gifted, documented in my name. He'd taken it without permission and given it to another woman. That was theft, regardless of his justifications about her deserving it or my not wearing it enough. But it was more than that. He'd given away my family's history, my grandmother's wedding pearls, worn on the happiest day of her life. My great-grandmother's brooch, pinned to her coat as she came through Ellis Island with nothing else to her name. My mother's engagement ring, pressed into my hand in the hospital as she died, her last words making me promise to cherish it. He'd given those stories to someone else. As if they meant nothing. As if I meant nothing, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. She loved them. She cried. Vanessa, you should have seen her face. These pieces are going to help her so much. I knew I made the right call. I read that message 3 times, each reading making my chest tighter. He'd made the right call. He was sure of it. In his mind, this was a noble act, a generous gift to a woman in need. He was the hero in his own story, and I was just the bitter wife who didn't understand. I opened my email and started a new message to my lawyer friend Patricia. We'd worked together on a contract dispute 2 years ago, and she'd told me to call if I ever needed anything. Patricia, I need to understand something. If a spouse takes property belonging solely to the other spouse, property with clear documentation of individual ownership, and gives it to a third party without consent, what are the legal implications? Asking for a friend. Can we talk tomorrow? Her response came back in under 5 minutes. That's theft. Doesn't matter if they're married. Individual property is individual property. Call me tomorrow at 9 a.m. And Vanessa, if this is about you and not a friend, I'm sorry. But yes, we should definitely talk. I smiled in the darkness. Patricia always was sharp. The house felt different now. Empty in a way it hadn't been before. I walked through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. The living room furniture Marcus had insisted on. Expensive, modern, uncomfortable. The art on the walls he'd chosen because it made a statement, even though I'd wanted family photos and watercolors. The kitchen gadgets he'd bought and never used, leaving them for me to figure out. This was his house, I realized. I'd been living in Marcus's house, sleeping in Marcus's bed, waiting for Marcus to decide when we'd try for children again, when we'd go on vacation, when he'd have time for me. When had I disappeared? When had I become so small? I thought about my jewelry design business. Trinkets that don't sell, he'd called it. But that wasn't true. I'd made $12,000 last year selling custom pieces on Etsy. Not a fortune, but not nothing either. I'd had 3 pieces featured in a boutique design magazine. I'd been commissioned to create a wedding set for a client in Boston who'd paid $2,500, but I'd learned to downplay it around Marcus. Learned to call it a hobby when his colleagues asked. Learned to apologize for spending time on it instead of, what? Sitting around waiting for him to come home and pay attention to me? My phone rang. Sarah Chen again. I've been thinking about our conversation, she said without preamble, and I want to be straight with you. If you're considering filing a false report, don't. I'll help you if this is real, but I won't be part of insurance fraud. It's not false, I said. My jewelry is gone. It was taken without my permission. I don't know where it is right now. All technically true. I just needed to understand the process before I did anything. Where's Marcus in all this? I hesitated. He's out, Vanessa. Sarah's voice softened. Talk to me. What's really going on? And suddenly I was crying. Deep, ugly sobs that I'd been holding back since Marcus had stood in our bedroom with my family's treasures in his hands. All the grief from the miscarriages I'd pretended to be okay about. All the loneliness from the nights he'd worked late or gone out with colleagues. All the fear that I was losing him, or maybe already had. He gave it to her. I managed between sobs. He took my grandmother's pearls, my great-grandmother's brooch, my mother's ring, everything, and he gave it to his assistant. Said she deserves it. Said she needs something beautiful in her life. Silence on the other end. Then, Jesus Christ, Vanessa. He took them. And he's having dinner with her right now. He texted me about how she cried when he gave them to her. How happy they made her. Where are you? Home. I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there. Don't file anything. Don't call anyone else. Just wait for me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could argue. I wiped my face and went to the bathroom to splash cold water on it. The woman in the mirror looked older than 38. Tired, defeated. No, not defeated. Angry. I thought about my great-grandmother, who'd survived pogroms in Poland and started over in America with nothing. About my grandmother, who'd built a life during the Depression. About my mother, who'd fought cancer for 3 years before it finally won. None of them had been defeated. And neither would I. By the time Sarah knocked on the door, I'd stopped crying. I'd printed out all the documentation, photos, appraisals, receipts. I'd written a detailed timeline of what had happened. I'd collected my thoughts and my resolve. Sarah took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. Okay, she said when she finally let go. Show me everything. We sat at the kitchen table and I laid it all out. The documentation, the messages, the history of Marcus's relationship with Celeste, the late nights, the texts, the gradual distancing from me, the fertility struggles that he'd stopped wanting to discuss, the way he'd changed over the past year. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes in a small notebook she'd pulled from her jacket. Okay, she said when I finished. Here's what I see. Legally, this is complicated. You're married, but these pieces were clearly your separate property. Inherited, gifted to you specifically, documented in your name. He took them without permission and gave them to a third party. That's theft, full stop, but? I could hear the but coming. But proving it in a way that doesn't destroy your life is tricky. If you file a police report, Marcus will be investigated. This could cost him his job, especially if he's up for partner. It would definitely destroy your marriage beyond repair. I think the marriage might already be destroyed. Sarah nodded slowly. Maybe, but you need to be sure, Vanessa. because once you start this, you can't unring that bell. I thought about Marcus's text message, about him sitting across from Celeste right now, watching her wear my grandmother's pearls, about him coming home tonight smelling like her perfume and expecting me to just accept this. I'm sure, I said. Okay then. Sarah pulled out her phone. First thing tomorrow, you file the insurance claim. Report the jewelry stolen because it was. It doesn't matter who took it. You report what's missing, you provide all this documentation, and you let the insurance company's investigators do their job. And the police report? We file that tomorrow, too. You come to the station, you tell exactly what happened, no lies, no exaggerations. He took your property without permission and gave it to someone else. That's the truth. What happens to Marcus? Honestly? Depends. If he returns the jewelry immediately, charges might not be filed. But the insurance claim will proceed regardless. And Vanessa? She looked at me seriously. If he's been giving away property worth $60,000 to another woman, you need to look at your bank accounts. You need to check your credit cards. You need to know what else might be going on. My stomach dropped. I hadn't thought about that. Do it now, Sarah said. I'll wait. I got my laptop and logged into our bank accounts. We'd always kept joint finances. Marcus had insisted on it when we got married. No secrets, he'd said. We're a team. It took me 20 minutes to go through everything. When I was done, I felt sick. What is it? Sarah asked. Cash withdrawals, I said, my voice hollow. Over the past 6 months, $10,000 in cash withdrawn in small amounts. 300 here, 500 there. Never enough to trigger alerts, but it adds up. What did he say the money was for? I didn't know about it. He must have been hiding the statements. We get them digitally, and he always said he'd handle them. Said it was one less thing for me to worry about. Sarah's expression was grim. What else? Credit card charges at restaurants I've never been to. Hotels. My hands were shaking again. A jewelry purchase from Tiffany's 3 months ago. $2,200. Did you get jewelry from Tiffany's? No. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said quietly, Vanessa, I think this is more than a gift to his assistant. I think this has been going on for a while. I nodded. I'd known, really. Deep down I'd known. But seeing it in black and white, documented in our bank statements, our money, spent on someone else, made it real. So what do? I asked. Sarah's eyes were sympathetic but determined. You protect yourself. Tomorrow we file the police report. We file the insurance claim. And you call a divorce attorney. Tonight you document everything you just found. Screenshot every statement, every transaction. Save it all. He'll know I'm looking. Good. Let him know. Let him panic. See what he does. She paused. And Vanessa? Change your passwords. All of them. Bank accounts, email, everything. Tonight. After Sarah left, I spent 3 hours going through our finances. Every statement, every transaction, building a timeline of Marcus's deception. The pattern was clear once I knew to look for it. Cash withdrawals started 7 months ago, right after Celeste started working at his firm. Restaurant charges increased. There were charges at lingerie boutiques, florists, hotels in the city, even though we lived here. He'd been buying her things, taking her places, building a relationship with our money while I sat at home designing jewelry and mourning our unborn children. The Tiffany's purchase from 3 months ago included a receipt in the digital statement. A pendant. Rose gold with a small diamond. Purchased the week of Celeste's 32nd birthday, according to her Facebook page that I definitely wasn't stalking anymore. I printed everything. Organized it into folders. Created digital backups on 3 different cloud services. It was almost midnight when Marcus finally came home. I heard his car in the driveway, heard him fumbling with his keys at the front door. He was trying to be quiet, probably thinking I was asleep. I was sitting in the living room in the dark, with all the documents spread out on the coffee table in front of me. He jumped when he turned on the light and saw me. Jesus, Vanessa. You scared me. He laughed nervously. What are you doing sitting in the dark? Looking at our bank statements, I said calmly. It's interesting reading. His face went pale. What are you talking about? $10,000 in cash withdrawals, $2,200 at Tiffany's, hotel charges, restaurant charges. I picked up one of the statements. The Four Seasons, really? We've never been able to afford the Four Seasons. I can explain. You already explained, I interrupted. This afternoon, you explained that Celeste deserves beautiful things, that she's been through so much, that she needs meaningful gifts. I stood up. What you didn't explain is that you've been buying her beautiful things for months, that you've been taking her to expensive hotels and restaurants, that you've been building a whole separate life with her while I sat here like an idiot, believing you when you said you were working late. It's not what you think. Stop. My voice cracked like a whip. Do not stand in our living room and lie to me. Not after everything. Not after today. Marcus ran his hand through his hair. There was the courtroom gesture again. Fine. Yes, Celeste and I have grown close. But it's not. We haven't what? Slept together? Does it matter? You've given her my grandmother's pearls. You've given her gifts that cost thousands of dollars. You've taken her to hotels, Marcus. Hotels. We needed somewhere private to talk, he said desperately. Her apartment isn't safe. Her ex keeps showing up. And my office isn't appropriate. We just talked, Vanessa. That's all. In hotel rooms? Yes. In hotel rooms where we could have privacy? I laughed, and it sounded broken even to my ears. Do you hear yourself? Do you hear how insane that sounds? You don't understand the pressure I'm under at the firm, he said, his voice rising. Partner decisions are being made. I need support. I need someone who understands. You have a wife, I shouted. You have a wife who supported you through law school, who gave up jobs for you, who's been trying to have your children while you've been sneaking around with your assistant. She's not just my assistant, he shouted back. She's a brilliant attorney in her own right. She understands my work in a way you never could. He stopped, realizing too late what he'd said. She what? I asked quietly. She's better than me? Smarter? More supportive? More deserving of my family's heirlooms? Marcus's shoulders sagged. I didn't mean it like that. Get out. What? Get out. I pointed to the door. Go to a hotel. One of the ones you've been taking her to, maybe. But you're not sleeping here tonight. You're not sleeping in our bed after spending the evening with her, watching her wear my grandmother's pearls. Vanessa, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I said. And I was surprised by how calm I sounded. I could call the police right now. Have you arrested for theft? Because that's what you did, Marcus. You stole my property and gave it to your mistress. She's not my mistress. Then what is she? What do you call a woman you take to hotels and buy jewelry for with your wife's money? What do you call someone you give irreplaceable family heirlooms to? Someone you spend your evenings with while your wife waits at home? He had no answer for that. Get out, I repeated. Take some clothes. Take whatever you need. But you're not staying here tonight. For a moment, I thought he might argue, thought he might pull out his lawyer voice and try to talk circles around me, but something in my face must have told him this wasn't a negotiation. Fine, he said finally. Fine, I'll go. But Vanessa, you're overreacting. When you calm down, you'll see that. I'm perfectly calm, I said. I've never been calmer. Now go. After he left, after I heard his car pull out of the driveway for the second time that day, I went back to the living room and looked at all the evidence spread across the coffee table. Bank statements, credit card records, screenshots of his text messages, photos of my stolen jewelry. I thought about my great-grandmother, standing on the deck of a ship, looking at the Statue of Liberty, her sapphire brooch pinned to her coat. Everything she owned in the world on her back. I thought about my grandmother, walking down the aisle in a Depression-era courthouse, wearing her mother's pearls because they couldn't afford new ones. I thought about my mother, taking off her engagement ring in the hospital, pressing it into my hand with the last of her strength, making me promise to treasure it. Those women had survived. They'd endured. They'd fought for their families, for their dignity, for their right to exist in a world that often didn't want them. And I would too. I picked up my phone and set an alarm for 8 o'clock. Tomorrow I had appointments. With Sarah at the police station at 9. With Patricia, my lawyer, at 10. With Rachel from the insurance company at 2 tomorrow, I would start getting my life back. But tonight, I poured myself another glass of Marcus's expensive wine and toasted my ancestors, the strong women who'd given me both their jewelry and their strength. "I promise," I said to the empty room. "I won't let you down." The jewelry was gone. My marriage was probably over. Everything I'd built over the past 7 years was collapsing, but I wasn't defeated. Not yet. Not ever. Because sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back. And I was my great-grandmother's great-granddaughter. Fighting back was in my blood. The morning sun felt different, sharper, like everything had come into focus overnight. I'd barely slept, but I wasn't tired. I was running on something else now. Purpose, maybe, or rage refined into determination. I'd spent the hours before dawn organizing everything into 3 neat folders. One for the police, one for the insurance company, one for Patricia. At 8:30, I was showered, dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy suit I'd bought for Marcus's firm events but rarely wore, and standing in front of the mirror applying makeup with steady hands. The woman looking back at me wasn't the defeated wife from yesterday. She was someone else. Someone who'd finally woken up. My phone buzzed. "Marcus, can we talk?" I stayed at the Marriott. I think we both said things we didn't mean. I didn't respond. Let him wonder. Sarah was waiting for me at the police station at 9 o'clock sharp, 2 coffees in hand. She looked at me carefully when I walked up. "You okay?" "I'm ready," I said, and meant it. The report took an hour. I sat across from Detective James Kowalski, Sarah's colleague, and told him everything. The jewelry, the documentation, Marcus taking it without permission, his admission via text message. I showed him the photos, the appraisals, the screenshots of his messages about giving the pieces to Celeste. Kowalski was mid-50s, gray hair, kind eyes that had probably seen everything. He listened without judgment, taking notes in careful handwriting. "Mrs. Hartley," he said when I finished, "I want to be clear about what happens next. We'll investigate this as theft of property. The fact that your husband is the alleged perpetrator doesn't change that. We'll need to interview him and Miss," he checked his notes, "Celeste Rodriguez. We'll need to recover the property." "What if they refuse to return it?" I asked. "Then we move forward with charges. But most domestic cases like this, once people realize we're serious, they cooperate." He paused. "I have to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Once we start, it's on the record. It could affect his career. Your marriage." "My marriage was affected the moment he chose to give my family's jewelry to another woman," I said quietly. "And his career?" "He made his choices. I'm just dealing with the consequences." Kowalski nodded slowly. "All right, then. We'll get started today." From the police station, I drove to Patricia's office in Center City. She worked out of a renovated brownstone, her name on a brass plate outside, Patricia Owens, Family Law. She hugged me when I walked in, even though we'd only worked together professionally before. "I'm so sorry, Vanessa. When I got your email, I hoped I was wrong about what it meant." "You weren't wrong," I said, and showed her everything. Patricia went through the documents with the focused intensity of a surgeon. She made notes, asked questions, occasionally shaking her head. "This is bad," she said finally. "The jewelry theft is one thing. But this financial pattern? This is dissipation of marital assets. If you file for divorce, and I think you should, this becomes evidence that he's been depleting your joint resources for an extramarital relationship." "Can I get the money back?" "In the divorce settlement, yes. The court doesn't look kindly on spouses who spend marital funds on affairs. We can also request that he be responsible for all the debt he incurred. These hotel charges, the Tiffany's purchase, all of it." She looked at me seriously. "But Vanessa, I need you to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. He's an attorney. He'll fight back. Let him fight," I said. "I'm done being the understanding wife." Patricia smiled grimly. "Good, because here's what we're going to do. First, we file for divorce today. Irreconcilable differences with a claim for dissipation of assets. Second, we request a temporary restraining order on all joint accounts. He can't withdraw anything without court approval. Third, we file for exclusive use of the marital home. You stay, he goes. Can we do all that? We can and we will. I'll have everything filed by end of business today. She leaned forward. Vanessa, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Is there any chance you want to reconcile? Any possibility you want to work this out? I thought about Marcus's text from this morning. About the years I'd supported him. About the miscarriages he'd barely acknowledged. About standing in my bedroom watching him put my grandmother's pearls in a box for another woman. About him saying, she deserves it, like I didn't. No, I said firmly. No chance. Then let's burn his world down, Patricia said. And I'd never liked her more. At 2:00, I sat in a conference room at Prestige Insurance with Rachel Morrison and her supervisor, a sharp-eyed woman named Carol Bennett. I laid out everything, the documentation, the police report I'd filed that morning, the photographs, the appraisals. Rachel and Carol exchanged glances as they went through the materials. Mrs. Hartley, Carol said carefully, you understand that we're going to investigate this thoroughly? We'll be interviewing your husband, we'll be verifying the police report, we'll be looking at your financial records. I understand, I said. I have nothing to hide. The police report says your husband took the jewelry and gave it to a third party, Rachel said, reading from her laptop. That's unusual for a theft claim. It's still theft, I said calmly. The property was mine individually. It was taken without my consent and given to someone else. I don't know where it is now. That's what matters, isn't it? Carol studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. You're right. That is what matters. We'll process the claim. Given the documentation you've provided, which is excellent, by the way, I don't anticipate problems. But the investigation will take 4 to 6 weeks. That's fine, I said. I'm not going anywhere. My phone started ringing the moment I got back to my car. Marcus. I declined the call. He called again immediately. I declined again. Then a text. The police were at my office. At my office, Vanessa. Do you know what you've done? I could lose my partnership over this. Call me. Now. I stared at that message for a long time. The panic in it. The anger. The assumption that he could order me to call him and I'd obey. I typed back, you did this to yourself. You stole my property. I filed a report. Actions have consequences. His response came in seconds. I didn't steal anything. That jewelry was just sitting in a drawer. I was giving Celeste something meaningful because she's been through hell. You're being vindictive because you're jealous. Me. The police have my statement. The insurance company has my claim. My attorney has the divorce papers. I'm done discussing this. A pause. Then, divorce papers? Are you insane? Over a misunderstanding? Me. Over $60,000 in stolen jewelry. Over $10,000 in cash withdrawals. Over hotel charges and restaurant bills and a $2,200 pendant from Tiffany's that I never received. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is theft, fraud, and adultery. Another pause. Longer this time. Marcus, I want to come home. We need to talk about this face to face. Me. The locks have been changed. Patricia is filing for exclusive use of the marital home today. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. Marcus, you can't kick me out of my own house. Me. It's not your house. It's in my name. My inheritance from my mother paid the down payment. Check the deed. That was true. My mother had left me $150,000 when she died. Marcus had wanted to use it for his student loans, but I'd insisted on putting it toward a house. Investment in our future, I'd said. What I'd actually done was make sure the house was titled solely in my name. The one thing I'd protected from him. He stopped texting after that. Sarah called an hour later. Kowalski and his partner went to Marcus's firm. According to the report, he was extremely agitated and uncooperative. He demanded to speak to his own attorney before answering any questions. What about Celeste? They're interviewing her tomorrow. She called in sick today. Convenient timing. Sarah paused. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I said, surprised to find it was true. I'm actually okay. Good, because you should know, Marcus called the station trying to get Kowalski's supervisor involved. Said you were filing a false report out of spite. Said the jewelry was marital property that he had every right to give away. What did Kowalski say? That the jewelry is documented in your name alone, making it your separate property. That taking it without permission is theft regardless of the relationship, and that if Marcus wants to dispute that, he can do it in court. I could hear the smile in Sarah's voice. Kowalski doesn't like entitled lawyers who think they're above the law. That night, I sat in my, not our, house and felt the silence differently. Not empty, peaceful. My phone buzzed constantly. Marcus called 17 times, left 11 voicemails that I didn't listen to, sent 43 text messages that ranged from apologetic to furious to begging. I blocked his number. He started calling from other numbers. His office line. Numbers I didn't recognize. I blocked those too. Finally, around 10 p.m., Patricia called. Marcus's attorney just contacted me. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? Everything. He wants to return the jewelry in exchange for you dropping the police report. He wants to keep the house. He wants you to pay his credit card debt because you benefit from his career. Patricia snorted. I told him where he could shove his demands. What happens now? Now? We wait. The divorce proceeds. The criminal investigation proceeds. The insurance claim proceeds. And Marcus panics. She paused. Vanessa, I need to tell you something. His attorney hinted that Marcus might claim the jewelry was a gift to you as a couple, that he had equal ownership. He can claim whatever he wants. I have documentation proving otherwise. Every piece was either inherited by me specifically or given to me individually. My mother's will explicitly leaves the ring to me, not to us. My grandmother's trust left the pearls to me. The brooch came from my great-grandmother's estate, again, to me specifically. Good, because that's the argument we'll make. But be prepared, he's going to fight dirty. She was right. The next morning, I woke to find my social media accounts flooded with messages. Apparently, Marcus had posted something on his Facebook, which he never used, about going through a difficult time. His colleagues and friends were commenting with support. Some had apparently heard his version of events and were sending me messages calling me vindictive, cruel, selfish. I deleted Facebook from my phone. Then I got an email from the bank. Marcus had tried to withdraw money from our joint account. The transaction had been declined because Patricia had already gotten the temporary restraining order filed and approved. All joint accounts were frozen pending the divorce proceedings. Another email. Marcus's attorney was requesting an emergency hearing about the exclusive use of the marital home. They claimed I couldn't afford it alone, that forcing Marcus out was punitive and unfair. Patricia responded within an hour. Let them try. You've been paying the mortgage from your jewelry business income for the past 8 months because Marcus spent his entire salary on his affair. We have the bank statements to prove it. I hadn't even realized that. Hadn't been paying attention to which account the mortgage came from. But Patricia was right. I pulled up the records and there it was. My Etsy income, my commission payments, all going to keep our house while Marcus spent his lawyer salary on hotels and Tiffany's and expensive dinners. On day 3, Celeste was interviewed by police. Sarah called me afterward. She claims Marcus told her the jewelry was his to give. Said he told her they were family pieces he'd inherited from his grandmother. She had no idea they were yours. Does Kowalski believe her? Doesn't matter if he believes her. She's in possession of stolen property. She either returns it voluntarily or we get a warrant. She's got until Monday to decide. Will she return it? Her attorney is advising her to cooperate. So yes, probably. Nobody wants to go down for receiving stolen property over someone else's affair. On day 4, Patricia called with news. The emergency hearing about the house, denied. Judge looked at the mortgage payment records and asked Marcus's attorney why his client hadn't been paying his share of expenses. The attorney had no good answer. So I keep the house? You keep the house. Marcus has to find somewhere else to live. And Vanessa? The judge wasn't happy about the Tiffany's purchase or the hotel charges. She specifically said it raised serious questions about Mr. Hartley's use of marital funds. That's going to help us in the final settlement. On day 5, Marcus showed up at my door. I watched through the window as he stood on the porch, looking disheveled in a wrinkled suit. His hair needed cutting. He'd lost weight. He knocked, then knocked again. Then called out, "Vanessa, please. I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Please, just talk to me." I didn't open the door. He stood there for 20 minutes before finally leaving. On day 7, Celeste returned the jewelry. Sarah brought it to my house personally. Each piece carefully bagged and documented as evidence. We laid everything out on my kitchen table: the sapphire brooch, the triple-strand pearls, my mother's diamond ring, the matching earrings, the Cartier watch, the ruby pendant, all there, all intact. She signed an affidavit, Sarah said, stating that Marcus Hartley gave her these pieces, that she believed they were his to give, and that she's returning them voluntarily upon learning they were stolen property. What happens to Marcus now? Kowalski is recommending charges. Grand larceny. The DA will make the final call, but given the value and the documentation, they'll probably prosecute. He could go to jail? He could, probably won't, not for a first offense. But he'll have a criminal record. He'll lose his partnership for sure. Maybe his license to practice law, depending on the Bar Association's ruling. I looked at my grandmother's pearls, remembering her wearing them in faded photographs. Remembered, my mother pressing her ring into my hand with shaking fingers. "Good," I said quietly. "He should face consequences." The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Marcus had no leverage. The evidence of his affair was overwhelming. The dissipation of marital assets was documented in black and white. The fact that he'd stolen my property was now a matter of criminal record. Patricia was ruthless. She filed motion after motion, each one backed by evidence Marcus couldn't refute. She requested full forensic accounting of our finances. She demanded Marcus pay back every penny he'd spent on Celeste. She asked for sole ownership of the house, the car, everything. "You're entitled to it," she told me. "You paid for most of it. You maintained the home. You supported him through law school. And he destroyed the marriage through his own actions." 6 weeks after I'd watched Marcus put my jewelry in a velvet box, the insurance company cut me a check. Rachel called to tell me personally, "The investigation is complete. Your claim is approved. We're paying out the full insured value, $68,000 after appreciation since the last appraisal. The check will arrive in 3 business days." "But you recovered the jewelry," I said, confused. "Yes, which means you have a choice. You can keep the jewelry and return the payout, or you can surrender the jewelry to us and keep the money. Either way, you're made whole." I looked at the pieces, still in their evidence bags on my desk. My family's history, my grandmother's happiness, my great-grandmother's courage, my mother's final gift. "I'm keeping the jewelry," I said. "But thank you for the option." "I expected you'd say that," Rachel said warmly. "In that case, we'll just need you to sign some paperwork confirming the recovery. And Mrs. Hartley, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of jewelry claims. This is the first time I've ever been glad to see someone get their pieces back." The criminal trial was scheduled for 3 months out, but it never happened. 2 weeks before the court date, Marcus's attorney contacted Patricia with a plea deal. Marcus would plead guilty to a reduced charge of theft of property. He'd pay restitution of $68,000, the full insured value. He'd accept a suspended sentence with 2 years probation. And he'd agree to an uncontested divorce with Patricia's proposed settlement terms. "It's a good deal," Patricia told me. "He pays you the full value of the jewelry even though you got it back. You keep the house. He takes all the debt he incurred during the affair. You split the remaining marital assets 50-50, which isn't much after his spending spree, but it's fair. And the best part? He's agreed to pay my fees and the insurance investigator fees as part of restitution. What about his partnership? Gone. The firm fired him 2 weeks ago. Something about moral character inconsistent with firm values. Patricia's smile was sharp. Turns out stealing from your wife and spending firm time on your mistress doesn't look good to the partners. And Celeste? Also fired. Different firm, but word travels fast in the legal community. She's apparently trying to get hired somewhere in New York. Patricia paused. For what it's worth, I heard Marcus tried to contact her after he lost his job. She blocked his number. I thought about that. Marcus losing everything while the woman he'd given my jewelry to had simply moved on. There was probably a lesson there about what happens when you build relationships on deception. The day the divorce was finalized, I wore my grandmother's pearls to court. Marcus saw them when he walked in. I watched his face go pale, watched him realize what I'd done. That I'd gotten everything back, that his grand gesture had cost him everything and gained him nothing. The hearing took 15 minutes. The judge reviewed the settlement agreement, asked if we both understood and accepted the terms, declared the marriage dissolved. Just like that, 7 years erased. Afterward, Marcus caught up with me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Vanessa, please. Can we just talk? 5 minutes? I looked at him, really looked at him, and barely recognized the man I'd married. He'd aged years and 3 months. His suit was cheap, off the rack. His watch, the expensive one I'd bought him, was gone, probably sold to pay for his new attorney. What do you want to talk about? I asked. I'm sorry, he said, and he might have even meant it. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I threw away everything good in my life because I was stupid and selfish, and I'm so sorry. Okay, I said. Okay? He looked hopeful. Does that mean... It means I heard you. You're sorry. Apology noted. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. Anything else? The jewelry, he said quietly. You're wearing the pearls. You got everything back? I did. And the insurance money? Also got that. Turned out when you file a claim on stolen property, and then the property is recovered, you can choose to keep the property and return the payout, or keep the payout and surrender the property. I chose to keep my family's legacy. I paused. But you're paying me the full insured value anyway, as part of the restitution, so really, I got both. He closed his eyes. You planned this, all of it. From the beginning. No, I said honestly. I didn't plan any of this. You gave me my grandmother's pearls to your mistress. You stole from me. You destroyed our marriage. I just dealt with the consequences. I protected myself and what was mine. I lost everything, he said, and he sounded broken. My job, my partnership, my reputation, you. You didn't lose me. I corrected gently. You threw me away. There's a difference. I walked away then, my heels clicking on the marble courthouse floor, my grandmother's pearls cool against my skin. 3 months later, I stood in my studio, the spare bedroom I'd converted after Marcus moved out, putting the finishing touches on a custom necklace. The client had commissioned it for her daughter's graduation, a delicate gold chain with 3 small diamonds representing past, present, and future. My jewelry business had exploded after the divorce. Apparently, local news had picked up the story of the woman who'd gotten her stolen heirlooms back, and it had gone viral. Woman uses insurance claim to expose husband's affair, read one headline. Stolen jewelry leads to attorney's downfall, read another. I'd been interviewed by 3 magazines, featured on 2 podcasts. My Etsy shop went from a dozen orders a month to hundreds. I'd had to hire 2 assistants to keep up with demand. The custom work was what I loved most, though. People trusting me with their stories, their memories, their legacies, turning their grandmother's broken earrings into a new pendant. resetting inherited stones into modern designs, creating new heirlooms. My phone buzzed, a message from Sarah. Drinks tonight? I want to hear about the Paris trip. I smiled. Paris had been incredible. 2 weeks, just me, wandering museums and eating in cafes and shopping in vintage jewelry markets. The first vacation I'd taken alone in years. The first time I'd felt truly free. I typed back, 7 p.m. at the Blue Rooster. Her response was immediate. Perfect. Proud of you, by the way. I looked around my studio, at the careful chaos of my work in progress, at the photograph of my mother on the wall, young and smiling, wearing the pearls I'd saved, at the sapphire brooch pinned to a velvet board, its facets catching the afternoon light. My phone buzzed again. This time, an email notification from my bank. Direct deposit received for $200. Payment for last month's commissions and sales. Not bad for trinkets that don't sell. I picked up my grandmother's pearls from where I'd laid them on my work table. I wore them often now, had stopped saving them for special occasions. Every day was special. Every day was mine. My life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days, days when I mourned the marriage I'd thought I had, days when I wondered if I'd done the right thing. But then I'd remember Marcus standing in our bedroom with my family's treasures in his hands, saying, "She deserves it," like I didn't. Like my grandmother's joy and my great-grandmother's courage and my mother's dying wish meant nothing compared to his assistant's feelings. And I'd remember that I'd fought back, that I'd protected what was mine, that I'd refused to be small or quiet or understanding anymore. The jewelry had been returned. The marriage had been ended. The insurance had paid out. Justice had been served. But more than that, I'd been returned to myself. My phone buzzed one more time. A new order notification from Etsy. Someone in California wanted a custom piece made from her grandmother's ring. I clicked to accept the order, already envisioning the design possibilities, already thinking about how to honor this stranger's family legacy. Because that's what I did now. I took broken things and made them beautiful again. I took forgotten heirlooms and gave them new life. I took women's stories and turned them into something they could wear close to their hearts. Marcus had tried to give away my grandmother's pearls, thinking they were just jewelry, just things sitting in a drawer. He'd never understood that they were never just jewelry. They were survival and hope and love and strength. They were every woman in my family who'd ever fought for something that mattered. They were proof that some things are worth fighting for. And in the end, I'd proven myself worthy of that legacy. I put the pearls on, feeling their familiar weight around my neck, and got back to work. There were more stories to tell, more heirlooms to save, more women who needed to remember that they deserved beautiful things too. And this time, I was the one who got to decide what deserving meant. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.